Hey everybody. Hey, it's me. Welcome. Well, I'm not in my regular place. I and my daughter happened to get away to Crested Butte, which is some pretty phenomenal skiing. And I'm excited to do that, kind of a daddy-daughter type thing. Really a lot of fun. Uh, we've been, just having a good time. Very grateful. But I didn't want to miss another week. Last week, you're maybe thinking, wait, he wasn't here last week either. Where was he? Last week, I got to go to Michael Rood's studio in Charlotte, North Carolina, and got to talk about the new book, right? Which new book? You guessed it. This one right here, Crypt the Image, Volume 3. So excited about that. So I can hardly wait till that comes out and I get to share all that is in the book. And I really believe it's I think it's my best. I think it's my best work ever. I got one comment. They're like, well, you can repeat a little bit. I'm like, well, I had to repeat some things, right? For people that maybe have never read volume 1 and 2, I had to kind of bring people up to speed. And for other people that maybe read it 10 years ago, I had to bring, kind of remind people where they were. But I said so many new things in volume 3. I mean, it's crazy. I talk about genetic engineering. I talk about zombies. I talk about UFOs, which I did touch on those topics in the other books, right? But there's so much more to this whole story, right? And that's why I wrote volume 3 and the return of Jesus, right? So that is a major part in volume 3 and how it just all comes together. I'm terribly excited about it. I really want you guys to get a copy. Look, if you can't afford it, I just want you to read it. It's $2.99 on Kindle, $9.99 on douglashamp.com. The paperback is what, $23, $24. If that's too much for you, you can write to me and I will send you a copy. Okay. I just want you guys to read it. That really is my goal, for you to read the book. So if money's an issue, just let me know and I'll send you the book. Okay. If you can afford it, then, thank you for supporting the ministry. But if that's an issue, let me know and I will be glad to send the book to you. Okay. Well, let's get into the questions. And there's a whole bunch because I'm backed up for 2 weeks here. This is crazy. So I better get into this. Just looking before the show, a lot of great questions, a lot of wonderful questions. So let me pull this up here. And all right, here we go. So this is coming from Chad. He's asking about the wool and linen. So he's talking about, I'm sorry, let's see. Okay, hold on. So he's asking about Leviticus 19:19 and Deuteronomy 22, verse 11. Okay, so let's go to Leviticus 19:19. Now, just so you guys know, I wrote about this on my website, douglashamp.com. So you can go there and you can check that out. All right, so you don't only have to get it right here. But he says, you shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your livestock breed with another kind. You shall not sow your field with mixed seed, nor shall a garment of mixed linen and wool come upon you. Well, this is the same passage. Let's go over here. You shall not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seeds, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear a garment of different sorts. Now notice here, such as. The New King James has put such as in italics because it's not in the text. This is not just an example, but this is the rule. Wool and linen mixed together. Okay, so the such as should not be there. That's basically the bottom line. All right, that should not. Now again, I understand translating is a hard thing, so I'm not throwing these guys under the bus, but it gives the wrong impression. It gives the impression that wool and linen is just, and for example, but it's not a for example. This is the rule, right? Wool and linen should not be mixed together, and that's it. It's that simple. So I understand. And Chad goes on, he's asking about, how to live Torah properly. And I understand all that. But here's the beautiful thing. God did not make it difficult. Okay. God made it actually quite easy. but wool and linen you should not mix together. And I don't think I've ever worn a garment with wool and linen mixed in. So that's probably good news, right? Is that it's not too often that we actually have those two different things. Now, if it were just a regulation against mixed fabrics, well, that would be very different. But this is specifically wool and linen. Now, somebody who is into fabric was telling me that these really don't go together anyway, because wool, sorry, I got to adjust my screen a little bit, but wool, well, you know, it's I don't know what's the right word. I'm lacking the right vocabulary for this, but you know, some kind of a fabric, right? And obviously it's hair, some kind of hair, right? And then linen has like these barbs. If you look at it underneath the microscope, you actually see kind of like a saw, right? So it's going to cut that wool. So that's not going to work out too well. You have hair and you have something that's like a saw. You just put those together, and guess what? You are going to break it. So I've also heard, I've not done the research myself, but I've heard that wool and linen both resonate different frequencies that are incompatible with one another. So you might actually feel bad if you wear that. And there could be other reasons as well. But this is what God is saying. Those two specific fabrics, don't put them together. All right. Very good. So then Chad has a follow-up question. What's up with mixing different kinds of seed? Well, so let's just think about this for a second. So it's not that you have a different garden, and in one part of your garden you have tomatoes, the other part of your garden you have celery, and then you have carrots, right? But it's taking those seeds together and then just indiscriminately sowing those all together, right? And so that is not going to yield a good thing, right? It's not going to have a good yield. So no, I'm not a farmer, so I can't give you all the technical reasons why that is. It makes sense in my brain that it should not be, but I can't give you the actual scientific reason why that is. But that's what God is saying. So you can have a garden, you can have tomatoes in one part and carrots in the other, but just don't have them all in the same little plot, so that you're having to then kind of pick them out and you're not sure really what is what. I mean, I have a tiny little garden in our backyard. And I've had that problem where I'm like, no, what did I plant here? I kind of forget, so I want to make sure that I know that this little spot, even if it's like two by 2 feet, right? I just know that particular spot is, right there I planted, carrots or something, right? And then a little ways away from it, I planted something else, right? And so that is very helpful so that we don't have everything just running amok. And yeah. All right. Thank you for that. This is from Iris. Can you explain who the foolish nation is in Romans 10:19 and Deuteronomy 32:21? How does he make Israel jealous with this nation? All right. Romans 10:19. Excellent question, Iris. Let's go over to Romans 10:19. All right. So, but I say, did Israel not know? First, Moses says, I will provoke you to jealousy by those who are not a nation. I will move you to anger by a foolish nation. All right, let's cruise over there. So, Yeshurun grew fat. This is talking about Israel. Then he forsook God, who made him, and scornfully esteemed the rock of his salvation. All right, so they sacrificed to demons. They do all these bad things. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end will be, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faith. They have provoked me to jealousy by what is not God. They have moved me to anger by their foolish idols. But I will provoke them to jealousy by those who are not a nation. I will move them to anger by a foolish nation. All right. Great question. Great question. The answer, Iris, is right here in Hosea chapter 1. Then God said, call his name Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I will not be your God. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea. And I think I forgot to share my screen with you guys. I am sorry about that. I love to share the screen so that you can see what I'm looking at. So the answer here is in Hosea chapter 1. Call his name Lo Ami. Now, what does Lo Ami mean? Right? Well, it says, for you are not my people. That's exactly what it means. Not my people. Lo Ami, not my people. Where did they go? That's the real question. Where did the northern kingdom, All right. Okay. Just for people who may not understand this, I want to show you. He says, I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will have mercy on the house of Judah. All right. So the house of Judah, the Jews, they had mercy. The house of Israel, that is the 10 tribes of Israel, they did not get mercy. And God said, you're not my people, right? So no mercy, lo ruchama. You're not my people. I'm not your God. That was it. That was the divorce. Now there's this incredible promise of good times coming in the future, but that was not to happen for quite a while. Then God says the same thing in chapter 2, talking to who? To the house of Israel, talking to the house of Israel. And he says, bring charges against your mother, bring charges. She's not my wife and I'm not her husband. Okay, so not her husband, not my wife, and she's not my people. So what happened to not my people? Well, they're no longer God's people. Now, I keep saying that, right? You're like, Doug, you keep saying that. I'm really trying to get this point across. Now, notice here in chapter 7, talking about Ephraim. Ephraim is a nickname for the northern kingdom of Israel. All right, I don't have time to prove that, but you'll have to just take my word for it for the moment. But Ephraim, look what Ephraim has done. Ephraim has mixed himself among the peoples. Interesting use of words there, right? Ephraim ba'amim hu yitbolal. Okay, so Ephraim has now mixed himself among the peoples. He's a cake unturned, right? So kind of that doughy kind of stuff where it kind of easily it mingles with other stuff. Okay, let's take another look in Hosea. Let's see, 8:7. Here we go. 8:8. Israel is swallowed up. Again, talking about Israel, Ephraim, the northern kingdom. Now they are among the Gentiles, right? Bagoim, among the Gentiles, like a vessel in which is no pleasure. Interesting. But wait, there's more. The plot thickens. And in chapter 9, verse 17, God, my God, will cast them away because they did not obey him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations, among the Gentiles. Okay, so I hope this is kind of coming into view for you, that the northern kingdom of Israel, they're not God's people, so they became a non-people, and they were assimilated, mixed into the nations. All right. So when Paul is talking about all of that in Romans 9, 10, and 11, let's go back to Romans chapter 9, because this is going to help really put this to bed for you. Okay, so Romans chapter 9, let's go back here to 9. Now, check this out, because this is really cool. All right, so God says, well, Paul is speaking here, of course. He says, even us of whom he called, not of the Jews only, remember Paul's Jewish, but also of the Gentiles. So Paul is saying that God has called the Jews and the Gentiles. As he says also in Hosea, I will call them, who is them? Wait a second. I will call them, that is the Gentiles, I will call them my people who were not my people, and her beloved who was not beloved. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they shall be called the sons of the living God. Who is he talking about? He's talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. What happened to them? They became not God's people. They were sent away into the nations, right? So who is he going to use to make them jealous? The nations, right? But remember, there's two parts to this. There are the people of the northern kingdom that went out into the nations, but you also have the Jews, right? You have the house of Judah. So God wants to bring these two houses back together again. That is a major part of this, is to bring them both back together. So it could be said that to some extent, the Torah keeping part of the house of Israel, the Gentiles who have come to faith in Jesus and are now really starting to understand Torah and all that God's going to use them to make the Jews jealous. That's entirely possible. That's a way to read that. It could also be that when the northern tribes went out into the nations, then God used people just in and amongst the nations to bring them back to faith. However he did that, it's to bring about the restoration of the two houses, house of Israel and the house of Judah, to make them one again. All right, very good, Iris, thank you. All right, this is from Legacy. What is the proper Christian response when a spouse keeps wanting and trying to decorate our home with Hindu idols? I know the scripture says if an unbeliever is content to stay with the believer, they must stay together. I do know that I should try to win her over by showing her love and acceptance. However, this is something that's a source of conflict within our marriage. As a God-fearing Christian, I feel that Hindu idols aren't right. And this is something I've made clear to my wife. I cannot, however, force her to see things my way, and I cannot force my beliefs on her. I do love my wife very much, and I do pray for her, but I still have this nagging thought in my head that I should be doing more, or I should be more firm. All right, so at Legacy, I would suggest that the answer probably lies in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, okay? I think it's 1 Corinthians. That's 2 Corinthians. Let's try this. I'm pretty sure it's 8. Okay, so here we have, let's see if I got this one right. Oh, how to get Romans. Let's try that again. There we go. All right, now concerning things offered to idols. All right, I think this is the chapter for you. We know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. If anyone thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing, yet as he ought to know. If anyone loves God, etc. Therefore, concerning the eating of things offered to idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is no other God but one. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we for him, and one Lord Jesus Christ, through whom are all things, and through whom we live. However, there is not in everyone that knowledge, for some with consciousness of the idol, until now eat it as a thing offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. But food does not commend us to God, for neither if we eat are we the better, nor if we eat are we the worse. But beware lest somehow this liberty of yours becomes a stumbling block to those who are weak. Okay, for if anyone sees you who have knowledge eating in an idol's temple, will not the conscience of him who is weak be emboldened to eat those things offered to idols? All right, so look, here's what I suggest. I totally agree with you. I totally, absolutely agree with you that Hindu idols are not really a great idea. All right, I mean, they're not good. As long as your wife is not actively worshiping those idols, like if she just thinks they're artistic or they're nice decorations, again, it's not my place to say if that is okay. However, there are many cities around the world where there are idols, and I can just keep walking on by. Okay. They don't bother me. So I think in your mind, you can understand that, look, this little statue is nothing. Okay. That's what Paul says, right? The idol's nothing, right? So you don't need to freak out about it. However, you want to be careful so that if there's somebody who might see this and think, oh, you guys are worshiping idols, well, that could be an issue. Okay. I don't know your home situation. Only you know that. Only you can answer that question correctly. I can't answer that for you. But you'll have to be really thinking about that if that is something that is a concern. So if your wife just says like, well, these are just pretty and that's all they are to me, then maybe that's sufficient. You know your wife. I don't know her. You just say, okay, we both understand that, these things are nothing and we're not going to make a big deal of it. And I think you could meditate in 1 Corinthians chapter 8 for a while. So, if that works for you, then maybe that's good enough. Maybe your wife will come around someday and say, you know what? Yeah, I don't really feel good about these things either. So that's probably where I would leave it. And just keep praying, and as you said, you definitely want to love her, pray for her, and let the Holy Spirit work, right? That's definitely something that's important. All right. Thank you for that question. And now Bobby has a question. He's talking about watching the program and that the Native American Hopi tribes have teachings that they were created by aliens, and they have some glyphs on their tribal lands of giants, etc. So he's asking me whether any of my books address the findings in America that have similar to those in Sumeria. Bobby, I do not deal with American archaeology. All right, that's not something that I have delved into. You might check out L.A. Marzulli. He's actually done a lot of work on that stuff, and I don't know if he connects it with Sumerian. To my knowledge, he doesn't. But if you want to see what's going on, he's done a lot of good work. So check out L.A. Marzulli on that. So the next question he asks is, how can this knowledge that this ancient demonic activity help us here and now? Well, now that's an interesting question. Sometimes you do science just for science. Sometimes you do archaeology just for archaeology. Sometimes you do Bible research just for the sake of, well, that was interesting. Okay. And sometimes there's another group of people or generation that has to come along and say, oh, now I understand how this all fits together. And, and that could be, I'll be the first to tell you that we don't want to get sucked into doing nothing but studying the Nephilim. All right. I mean, look, I think it's a very interesting topic. Obviously, I've written 3 books on it. I think it's very interesting. And I think there are, it's a good reminder of where we've been. It helps us to understand where we're going. Now, how does that affect my life here and now? It probably doesn't. Aside from the Lord coming back tomorrow, I don't know that having this knowledge will make me a better Christian, will make me a better father, will make me a better husband, or others a wife. I don't know that it will do any of that. It probably won't. It probably won't do any of that stuff, right? So that's where we have to be very careful that we kind of dip our toe in the water. We don't get sucked in too deep, right? So that's what I encourage you. And then the last question he has, do you have any other tools for studying this area to suggest for those who are very limited income? As I said, Bobby, I'm happy to send you my books. If money's an issue, I'd be glad to send them to you. So just write me and let me know. I don't want money to be something that would keep you from those. But as far as other resources for that specifically, nothing's coming to mind at the moment. Okay. So, all right, good. The question from Iris, how would you explain Revelation 3:10 to those who believe in the pre-trib rapture? All right, let's go to Revelation 3:10. Let's cruise over there. All right, so who is this addressed to? The church in Philadelphia. Interesting. Okay, so he says, because you've kept my command to persevere. Who has? The church of Philadelphia. Okay, I will also keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Now, the pre-trib rapture people are assuming that the terminal generation, the one that's going to experience the rapture, will be the church of Philadelphia. Now, I think that is a little bit arrogant. As I've gone through a number of times through this list of churches, I do not think that these are church epics, that these are eras in church history. I've seen people who try to do this, and they say, well, the church of Ephesus was basically from the time of Jesus until 172 AD. And you're like, well, where'd you get the number 172 or 213 or whatever it may be? And they just kind of make stuff up. They just arbitrarily say, well, this is how it is, and that's what it is. I think that is really, really, really lousy. Okay. So the Church of Philadelphia, I see these as types of church that can exist. They can be churches or they can be people, and these are character traits that can exist. So let's say that, okay, maybe this Church of Philadelphia represents a type of people, not necessarily a time period, or an epic, but it represents a group of people who will be alive at the return of Jesus. Will these people be kept from the time of trial? Well, maybe. Let's check out another passage, because this is really what answers the question for us. So here we are in Isaiah 26:19. Your dead shall live together with my dead body. Awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust. All right, so this is the resurrection, plain and simple. Then he says, come, my people, enter your chambers and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little moment until the indignation is past. Okay, so maybe the people who are in the Church of Philadelphia are representative of the group that kind of got it all right, and they're going to be hidden away. It doesn't say anything about a pre-trib rapture. Not at all. Not at all, right? In fact, why are they hidden away? Because the Lord comes out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. That's why they're hidden away, because the Lord is coming back. All right, so the Lord's coming back, and as Paul has clearly said, we are not appointed to wrath, to God's wrath. This word here, the indignation, it's the same word as wrath, same exact word. So we're not going to experience God's wrath when he comes back to judge the inhabitants of the world. That's the same thing that is being said to the Church of Philadelphia. How long is that? Well, it's an hour, apparently. How long is it here? It says for a little moment. How long is a little moment? I don't know. An hour? Could be. In the grand scheme of things, an hour is pretty short amount of time, right? So maybe it's an hour. So that's what I would suggest, is going to this passage, showing them that, say, well, okay, we're not entirely sure who the Church of Philadelphia is, but assuming that it could represent some people, not exclusively, but it could represent people throughout church history and in the terminal generation of people that have really gotten all A's on their Jesus report card, that that they could be hidden away. But it's going to be where that is, I don't know. It doesn't say anything about a pre-trib rapture. Rather, it's just at the time when God comes back to judge the world. That is what they're going to be hidden from. All right, very good. Okay, this is a question from Fabian. He says in Mark 7:19, the versions ESV, NET, and HCSB versions say this means all foods are clean. Is this just a translator's commentary? Okay, so yeah, this is the good old question of the food, right? And I'll tell you, there's a much simpler way to answer this. Oops. Okay, so let's just look in context. All right. Are you thus without understanding also? Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from outside cannot defile him, because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purifying all foods? All right. So, right. Let's look at some other translations. Let's look at the NET, which I generally like. All right. So it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and then goes out into the sewer. This is obviously talking about your plumbing in your body, right? It's going down into your intestine, your stomach, your intestines, and then it comes out into the toilet. That's what it's talking about. So what he's getting at here, he's not saying that pork is clean. That has nothing to do with it. And the easiest way to understand this, rather than getting into a long diatribe about, well, the Greek actually says this or that, here's the simplest answer, the simplest that you can possibly have for this age-old question. Okay, so I'm going to, Leviticus 11, I'm going to skip down, just kind of cut to the chase here. So this is the law of the land of the animals, the birds, and living creatures that move in the water, and all the creatures that swarm in the land, to distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between the living creature that may be eaten and the living creatures that must not be eaten. Look, the living creatures that may be eaten, what are those called? Food. The creatures that cannot be eaten, those are called not food. All right? It's that simple. It is that simple. So anything on this list that can be eaten, that includes cows, deer, chicken, right? Etc. That kind of stuff. Those are called food. The things that are not to be eaten, that are unclean, such as the camel, the rock badger, the hare, the pig, the rat, and all kinds of things, plus, water and fowl as well. Those are not food. So therefore, if they're not food, he's not talking about, somehow pork being on the menu. So that's the easiest way to answer that objection when people bring it up. Say, well, it says that all foods are clean. Yeah, all food is clean. By definition, all food is clean. Get it? All food is clean. So what God has said, these animals are food, they're clean. That's why they're called food, because they're clean. And the things that are unclean are not food. So this discussion between Jesus and the Pharisees, never, ever in a million years were they ever thinking that it was about pork. I mean, that's just ludicrous. This was not any kind of thing where Jesus is saying, well, I'm going to kind of change the whole food laws thing. And he wasn't saying that, not even remotely. All right, thank you. Okay, this is from Christine. When I'm talking to my Christian brothers and sisters about keeping Torah and they say you can't pick and choose what laws to keep, what am I supposed to say about stuff like Leviticus 14, 1-7, and other passages? They seem similarly odd. Okay, Leviticus 14, 1-7. Let's take a look at that. 14, 1-7. This is the law of the diseased person on the day of his purification when he is brought to the priest. Okay, well, do we have a priest? No, we don't. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is it that we don't have priests? I don't know. It's not my fault, right? Okay, the priest is to go outside the camp and examine the infection. Do we have priests today? No, we don't. There you go. If the infection of the diseased person has been healed, when the priest will command that 2 live birds, clean birds, a piece of cedar wood and a scrap of crimson fabric, and some twigs of hyssop be taken up for the one being cleansed, etc. Okay, so look, we don't have a temple. We don't have priests. You might say, well, then how could you possibly even begin to think about keeping these different, keeping the Torah? Well, look, we have precedents. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. What did Daniel and his friends do when they went to Babylon? Were they able to keep the law? Yeah, as much as they could, right? So why are we making a fuss about this? Here's what I'd encourage you to do, Christine. Instead of letting them kind of get you into this theological corner that they're trying to do, just say, I want to be like Daniel. I want to keep as much as I can keep, right? So nobody could ever keep all of the law, because some things were only for women, some things were only for priests, etc. And I'm not a priest and I'm not a woman. So there's whatever the laws that are specifically for them, I can't keep, right? Some laws are only for farmers. Guess what? I'm not a farmer. So I can't keep those laws either, right? So it's not to say that every one of the supposed 613, I don't think there's actually 613, but regardless, it didn't mean that I was somehow obligated to keep all those. It's the same thing with U.S. laws. Let's keep that in mind. So to the best of my knowledge, I have not broken any United States laws. But you may say, but you haven't kept them all. Well, that's true. I haven't, because let's see, I'm not an architect, so I don't have to be concerned about building codes. I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't have to be concerned about malpractice type stuff. It's just not in my my wheelhouse, right? That has nothing to do with me. Now, if I ever decided to go back to school and become a doctor, a medical doctor, then then I have to be concerned about those laws that govern medical issues. Then those suddenly become relevant to me. But until then, they're not relevant to me. So I don't have to be thinking about that. Okay. All right. Let's get to our next question. Thank you, Christine. Another question from Christine. Other than the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve could eat the fruits of all other trees. Their transgression is what introduced death to everything on the earth. But wouldn't the fruits they were eating prior to original sin die upon being consumed? Second part of the question, why do stars die if the curse was sentenced to this earth? So I don't think that it's only to this earth. I think that Adam had dominion over God's creation. He had dominion over God's creation. Also, Christine, consider this. Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was without form and void. Okay. And there was darkness over the face of the waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the deep. All right. So from that watery mass that God created, that was the earth. It was basically the cement in a cement mixer. That's the analogy that I think helps bring it home to understand, is that when God first created the earth, it wasn't this earth as we are standing on it today, but it was just water. He first created the substance from which the earth would come, like cement in a cement mixer. And then from there, he then fashioned all other things out of that. So he calls that earth, right? That's significant. And then all other things come out of that watery mass. Everything that exists came out of that watery mass that God calls earth. Now, God gave dominion to Adam and Eve over the earth, right? So that means that everything in God's creation was under the dominion of man. And where did man come from? Adam. Adam came from the Adamah. Adamah is the dirt, the soil, right? So they're related. So Adam and the earth are related. So Adam was the earth man. Rumor has it that Eve called him the dirt bag after the fall, but that's another story. So this is where Adam had dominion. When Adam fell, guess what? Everything fell into decay. And that's exactly what Paul tells us in Romans chapter 8. Let's take a look at that. Romans 8, he says, back to New King James, for the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation, not just the planet Earth, but all creation, that includes stars, nebulae, quasars, all that stuff, right? For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, because of him who was subjected in hope, because the creation itself will also be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. All right, so the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now, right? It wants to be freed from this corruption. So it's not just the planet, but it's all creation everywhere. Okay, thank you for that. All right, Ed Doss says, Dr. Hamp, Matthew 11:13, this passage seems to indicate that the prophet and the law lasted until John. Surely this cannot be the case. What is the meaning of this passage? Matthew 11:13, let's take a look at Matthew 11:13. All right, for all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. If you're willing to receive it, he is Elijah who is to come. All right, well, sure. So I think it's relatively simple, Ed, that the prophets and the law prophesied until John. I actually don't even see what the problem is, quite frankly. It's not to say that those are now done away with, but we don't add to the Tanakh, right? So if you take the law being the Torah and the prophets being the Nevi'im, right, and then the Ketuvim, the writings, right, you put that together, we have an acronym called the Tanakh, right? So, or what we call the Old Testament, right? So it's impossible to add to the canon of the Old Testament or the Tanakh, the Torah and the prophets, right? Because it's done, right? It's impossible to add anything to that canon because there's nothing to add. That canon is closed. Now, is it still relevant? Yes, massively. But you can't throw another book in there. I mean, that wouldn't be legit, right? So I think that's really what it's getting at. So I think this is kind of a glass half empty, half full thing. And just kind of reorient your eyes, and I think you'll see it a little differently. Okay. This is a question from Federico. 1 John 4:9. Why Yeshua is God's begotten son, and what main differences are there between creations like Adam Adamah and the rest of humans and angels? So 1 John 4:9. Let's take a look at 1 John 4:9. All right, first John 4:9. All right. So, beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. In this, the love of God was manifested toward us, that God has sent his only begotten Son into the world, that we might live through him. All right, so why the term begotten? Let's take a look at that in the Greek, right? So the Greek word is monogenes. Okay, monogenes. So genes is like generated. He's the only generated. That's interesting. The only generated. Okay. Well, I think the answer we will find in John 1:1. Okay. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay. Let's take a look here at the Greek. Right. En arche en hologos. So in the beginning was the Logos. All right. And here comes the beautiful part. Ke o logos in proston theon. And the Logos was proston. It means facing. The Logos was facing God. Ke theos en o logos. And the Logos was God. Wow, that's cool. All right. Now, they translated the word was with God. That's not incorrect. But I think facing God, which is what the word pros actually is face. It was facing God. So think about this. Now, again, we're talking about the triune nature of God, and that's always going to make your head spin a little bit. But think about this. All right, I'm looking at the camera, right, and I have a little screen so I can kind of see what's going on in the camera. You guys are seeing me out there in cyberspace, etc. All right, so let's imagine that this camera is kind of like a mirror. All right, so you guys, every morning you go and you look at yourself in the mirror. Okay, that person in the mirror, who is that person? That good-looking guy or that beautiful woman, right? Who is that person, right? You're like, oh, that's funny, but that's you, right? But it's not you. The person in the mirror isn't really you because you're like here, right? But the person in the mirror or in the camera, that's also you, but it's not quite you. And that person does what? Always looking at you, always looking at you. All right, so think of Yeshua, think of Jesus as the person in the mirror, and the guy standing in front of the mirror is God the Father. That's the basic analogy. All right, think of it that way. So, and that's really what John 1:1 is telling us. So, the Father is the source, just like you are the source of your reflection in the mirror. And everything that you do, the guy in the mirror or the woman in the mirror does perfectly, exactly the same way that you are doing, right? They are a perfect express image of who you are. But if you go to touch that mirror, what do you just feel kind of cold glass? You're like, wait, that can't be me, right? Because I'm right here. So think of Yeshua as he is a derivative of the Father. He's coming out from the Father in the same way that your reflection is coming out from you. It's not you, but it is you, right? And here's how you know that it's you, right? Because if somebody saw you naked in the mirror, well, they saw you naked, right? And you might be a little bit, I don't know, maybe you'd be embarrassed, maybe you wouldn't, but it is what it is, right? So that's the basic thing. If they've seen you in the mirror, they've seen you, right? But then again, they haven't. They've only seen your reflection. They haven't seen you, the person, right? So this is where it gets a little trippy in your head. But that's the basic idea. And that's why he is monogenes, because he is the only generated. That's what the word monogenes, the only generated, right, of the Father, right? So he is the only reflection of the Father, if you will. Okay, so thanks for that good question. Man, that was a great one. All right, so Jocelyn says, I've seen Anu described as the flat earth god. I know he was the sky god, but I read that his image was portrayed as a flat earth covered by a dome. What do you know about this? I've never heard of Anna described as a flat earth god. There's actually some evidence that the Sumerians understood the flat earth, or understood the round earth, not the flat earth. So look, flat earth stuff is just nonsense. It really is stupid. And I encourage people to let go of it and don't go down that path anymore, because you're wasting your life. All right, let's move on. This is from Arnold. What can you say about the book? We can say about in the book of Acts 13:14 that many Jews and devout converts to Judaism. Okay, let's take a look at that. Let's check it out. Acts 13:43. So when the congregation had broken up, many of the Jews and devout proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who, speaking to them, persuaded them to continue in the grace of God. All right, well, so understand that in a synagogue, there were Judeans, Jews, and there were non-Jews, but they believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they thought the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was really awesome. However, for whatever reason, they either felt that they could not or they did not want to convert to Judaism, right? They just didn't want to convert to Judaism. Because what did it mean to convert to Judaism? It wasn't just a religion. It was a nationality. In those days, to convert to Judaism, and that you're now giving your national allegiance to Judah, right? And so obviously there would be reasons people would not want to do that. There could have also been, I don't know, maybe some other reasons. We know that to some degree, some of the people made it difficult to become Jewish, that you had to first really take on the Torah, become really good at it, understand it well. You had to truly be circumcised. And so they're just, maybe they're like, I really like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but I don't want to go through the whole process to become that, right? So you had these devout proselytes that were in the Jewish context, not the Christian context. And then when Paul came along, they started thinking, well, that was pretty cool what he had to say. All right, let's move on. Another question from Christine. How come the Septuagint translation of Isaiah 13 speaks of giants and monsters and demons and man-goats, but the translations found in all the regular Bible translations don't speak of these things? Okay, when you ask why something happened in a manuscript, that's difficult to say. But I can tell you this. What it tells us is that when the translators of the Septuagint were doing their job, they understood those creatures as giants and monsters and demons. So yeah, I can't really say any more than that, Christine. It's a good question. But yeah, that's a sticky one. Okay. All right, let's go to Nathan. Shalom, Doug. My question tonight comes from Judges chapter 9, 8-15. Yotham tells a parable of trees gathering together to declare a king. While I understand its context towards Abimelech, what is happening, having trouble with the content of the parable, is there any deeper significance or symbolism of fig trees, olive tree, and thorn bushes? Thank you. Nathan, I'm not aware of any deeper significance. I think this was kind of being laid out to say, well, once upon the time, kind of an Aesop's fable, and here's this guy and here's that, and here's who you are. You're the little thorn bush. You're the little thorn there that thinks he's a somebody. You think you're a fig tree, you think you're an olive tree, but you're not. You're just a little thorn bush, right? And I think it was a way to humiliate the king at that time. All right, Christine asked, the Bible says that watcher angels will be reserved in chains of darkness until the day of judgment. Question 1, what scriptures cause people to believe that the watcher angels will get to roam free on earth before their judgment, as opposed to getting judged immediately upon their release? Question 2, are there any scriptures that indicate that Nephilim will be returning to earth before the day of the Lord? Okay, so I don't think there's any scripture that suggests that they get to roam free before their judgment, except Revelation chapter 9. Revelation chapter 9 tells us very clearly that those who are down there are going to be released. Okay, so in Revelation 9, and the fifth angel sounded, saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. Then was given the key to the bottomless pit, to the abyss, right? He opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit. And like the smoke out of, here comes all this stuff. You got these scorpions are coming. They're commanded not to harm the grass or the earth. And they have all this, authority to do stuff, but not to kill, right? So you've got 200 million of these things coming up out of the earth. I deal with these in great detail in Corrupting Image 2 and in Corrupting Image Volume 3. So you can check that out there as well. Guys, by the way, I'm still posting Corrupting Image Volume 3 on my website, douglashamp.com. But I also already have Corrupting Image Volume 2 posted on douglashamp.com. So you can go and you can get all the chapters there. If you don't want to buy the book, that's fine. Just go and check out the website, okay? And you can avail yourself of those on the site. All right. Let's see. Christine says, I just got the paperback, Corrupting Image 3. I'm almost at chapter 4 so far. It's pure awesomeness. Thank you, Christine. I do appreciate that. All right. Janet Benson says, when Yeshua returns, Scripture says he puts one foot on one mountain and 1 foot on a different mountain. How large is the person who can do that? Janet, correction. It says he'll put both feet on the Mount of Olives. Okay. And it's going to split in two. All right. So that's in Zechariah chapter 14. I think it's verse 4 or 5. All right. So check that out. He's going to put his foot down on one mountain, and then one mountain is going to split in two. Okay, that's very important. All right, we got some more questions. Let's get to those before our show is over. These are wonderful. Thank you, guys. I'm so glad you tune in and that you bring your questions. This is great. Okay, has the tribe that a child is born into always been dependent on the tribe of mother, not the tribe of father? So this is CC. No, that changed. So sometime after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the rabbis basically made this edict, and their thinking was, well, you don't always know who the father is, but you always know who the mother is, right? And I see their point. Not that I'm saying that I agree with this ruling, but I definitely understand the point. So. But before that, it was definitely the father that a person was known by, not the mother. Okay, this is from David Edwards. Hi, Dr. Hamp. Does the Ukraine and Russia situation have anything to do with the end times? I'm going to be dealing with that with my two co-hosts tomorrow on the Prophecy Roundtable, but I would say no. I really don't think it has anything to do with it. Now, everything that happens in this world is always setting up, right, for something in the future. So I'm not saying that this cannot be kind of a stepping stone to something later on. However, I do not believe that Russia is Gog, as Ezekiel 38 and 39 discusses. And I give the defense for that in Corrupting Image Volume 3. Look, I used to hold to that theory as well. Okay, just to be completely straight with you guys, I used to hold to the idea that Rosh in Ezekiel chapter 38, the chief prince, the word chief there is Rosh, and some translations suggest that it, could be Rosh or Roos or something like that. I don't think that anymore. So I've definitely repented on that. Okay, so hope that helps. But tune in tomorrow. We will go deep into that question. So Prophecy Roundtable. Not tomorrow night. Hold on. Sorry. Today's Tuesday. Thursday night. Tune in on Thursday night. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's go on. Theocracy Sean says, John 3:3, when Yeshua answered Nicodemus, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Is another from above or born again? Sorry if the question is confusing. Yeah. So really the word there can actually mean born again or from above. Right. So it's kind of split. As you look at the translation, it seems that it could be either one of those. So I wish I could give you a solid answer, but that is the way it goes. All right. Very good. Here's a question from Annette. Compare Revelation 3:10 to Matthew 26:39. I believe that is what is meant. Pray for the hour of temptation to pass if it's the Father's will. Okay, that's good too. I'll accept that. All right, and very good. Man, I got through all the questions in less than an hour. This is so exciting. Thank you, guys. Love your questions. They're really awesome. If you haven't gotten the book, again, I want to encourage you to do that, Corrupting Image Volume 3. If you can't afford it, just send me an email, and I'll send you the PDF, okay? If you do want the paperback, you'll have to get that from Amazon. Sorry about that. And if you want to be part of this ministry, really appreciate it. You can go to my patreon.com/Doug Hamp page, and you can give as little as $2 up to whatever you want every month, and it really does help. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And so I won't be having the regular study tomorrow night, but on Thursday, Prophecy Roundtable, we will have that, and we will get into the thick of it when it comes to the question of Ukraine, Russia, and Gog and all that. All right, so check that out. You guys are going to love it. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you. Until next time, many blessings.